Hello friends, long time no see for my regulars who follow along as we go. Thank you for being patient with me while I took a 2-week sabbatical from working. I definitely feel like I am no longer depleted, so hopefully that sticks around with me for a good long while. Thank you honestly for your patience, I really do appreciate it. Today's sequence, we're going to move gently into strength. I think most of you all know this by now, but I don't believe just because a class is gentle or because we move gently, that makes it easy or that means there isn't strength involved. I believe that you can still be gentle with yourself and find strength from gentleness and still do some pretty kind of moves. So we're going to play with that. You're each going to be in your own space and work in your place, wherever your work is. That never changes in my world. And some of y'all, maybe you haven't done anything for 2 weeks. So, keep that in mind as you start to move back into your body. You're going to want 2 blocks and potentially a blanket for this sequence. The 2 blocks we will use towards the end. So, but as always, if you don't have them, you can get away without them. You'll just miss some of the things we can access with them. No big deal. So we're going to start on our backs actually. So you can move all of those props off to the side. Move them somewhere where you can still do some kind of twisting actions and they won't be in the way. You can spread your arms out, etc. And come on down into constructive rest pose. If you're not sure or you've never done it before or what have you, constructive rest pose, we have our feet about as wide as our mat. We lean our knees in and our arms can come out away from our sides a little bit like a 45-degree angle-ish. Otherwise, you can always leave the elbows wide and bring the hands back onto the belly. I am going to go that route today. It's feeling mighty fine. Close your eyes for just a couple of moments and let's just take a few breaths. Just, dropping into this space on our mat, dropping into our bodies. And by bodies, I mean holistic body. Right? We've been talking about that a lot more lately. That it's not just this musculoskeletal system, which, in the beginning is the main thing we often focus on. It's also our energetic being, our subtle body, our thoughts, feelings, emotions, right? All of these things combined. And let's take a few moments on the breath because we'll work with the breath. The breath will help us through our movements today is probably more accurate. So just start to notice the breath. Start by doing that. You don't have to change it at all, right? Just notice how you're breathing at this moment. And then really simply see if you can extend the inhale and the exhale a little bit. So now we're starting to, I don't want to say deepen the breath, we're starting to lengthen the breath. Without stress, without strain. So everyone can have their own breath going on right now, yeah? And then we're going to add one more piece in today. We're going to start to make contact to our deepest abdominal muscles, the transversus abdominus, right? So you'll inhale like we've been doing. And when you exhale, at the end of the exhale, don't do it the whole time, but at the very end of the exhale, see if you can't just tone that belly button down or even the muscles below the belly button more accurately towards the spine without flattening the low back, by the way, yeah? So just very lightly, this is a gentle, light movement, right? As you exhale, think of all of your fibers of that space, belly button and below, knitting in towards each other. And pull down just slightly without flattening your low back. And then for those who are aware of it, familiar with it, when you exhale, what we've already been doing, same exact thing, but add on, see if you can't feel your pelvic floor or even invite your pelvic floor to pull just gently up towards the crown of the head. Remember, that's that diaphragm down at the very base of the pelvis, from the pubic bone to the anus and from your side of the hip over to the other, right? So it's this diaphragm that holds everything up and in. And then let that go. Come back to regular breathing. Walk your feet in until they're hip distance. Let your knees separate out so everything is hip distance. And a lot of us stand with our heels really close to our buttocks. For this particular exercise, walk your feet out just a little bit. If they're already there, you don't have to move them at all, right? Some of us naturally have our feet further forward, some of us further towards the forward towards the front of the mat, some of us towards the buttocks. Have them somewhere in between, right? And then we're going to do a little exercise. It's very light, very subtle. I want you to go ahead and take your feet. They don't move, by the way. They're on a sticky mat. They're stuck. But in their stuckness, they're going to push gently forward. And as your feet gently push forward towards the front of the mat, notice how your low back starts to move down towards the floor and you get a little pelvic tilt. This is called a posterior tilt. If we were doing cat-cow, it would be cat. And then now let that go. And just keep breathing, right? We're not matching up to the breath at this moment in time. Now this time, again, the feet are stuck, they don't move, but they pull back, the heels pull back towards the head side of the mat, or towards the buttocks, I could say. And notice that when you do that, probably your pelvis lifts, your low back lifts a little bit more than your natural curve, and you go into a cow tilt, or what in anatomy we call an anterior tilt. And you're still holding it, by the way. So we're turning on a whole bunch of the back of the leg muscles right now. The hamstrings have got to turn on to do this, and release that. So now match it with the breath. So when you exhale, push forward, gently that low back pulls down. You go into your cat, so to speak, posterior tilt, and then you're going to pull your feet towards the buttocks, towards the head side of the mat, and move into your cow on the inhale. So go ahead and do that a couple of times, a few times with your breath. So we're doing cat-cow, but rather than having you use all the muscles around the hips, the waist, and the pelvis, I'm having you use your leg muscles in order to move the pelvis, right? They're connected up to and through the pelvis, so they have the capacity to move that. So try to keep your belly soft for this. And see if you can't find that motion from down in the lower body. And if that doesn't make sense, just move the pelvis. Always, always work with where you are, what you understand and know. Now come back to the center where you're neither in an anterior or a posterior tilt, right? You are neutral, you have a little lumbar curve, that's your natural curve, that's just wonderful. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to bring the legs up into tabletop. Now, if that feels too intense right off the bat, keep that low back exactly where it was. Don't let your ribs flare up. That's some of us, right? And we're trying to keep that natural curve that we just created moments ago. If that's too much, bring the knees closer to the chest, trying to keep the low back curve. And work from there. It's not as much weight bearing, right? Bring your hands onto your thighs, mid-thigh or even closer towards the hip socket, somewhere in that realm. And I want you to push forward into the thighs, but at the same time, the thighs are pulling back into the hands. So it's a push-pull action. Again, I hopefully didn't move my pelvis, my low back, my low floating ribs. Hopefully everything stayed in their neutral position. And does anybody not feel, I'm such a jerk, does anybody not feel their low belly? Good morning. Whew. Put down one foot and then the other. Walk the feet wide, lean the knees in, arms out, palms up, pause, and just take a breath. So we're going to move slowly through this stuff because I really want you to understand the neutrality of the hips, the low back, and we'll change them at some points in time, but when we're doing some of this deeper core work, right, this transversus abdominus, we really want to stabilize everything when we lift or lower, etc. So now walk your feet back in. So hopefully now you have a really good sense of the muscles I'm talking about down deep, yeah? Now you're going to have your feet and knees hip distance. You're going to put one hand on your low belly, right beneath the navel. My thumb is on my navel, but all the rest of the hand is beneath it, right? I'm going to bring one hand behind my head, if that's okay with the shoulders. If it's not, you might not do the upper body part, and that's okay. Now take an inhale. And when you exhale, pull that belly down, those muscles we just found, without flattening the lower back, and then knit your ribs, your low floating ribs, in towards each other and down towards your hand and lift the body up. I'm still looking up at the sky and I'm lifting barely, maybe 2 inches, maybe 3 at the most off the floor. And then you're going to inhale and lower down. If it's too much to do the upper body, leave it out.
Exhale, pull that low belly in and down, that transversus abdominus, the corset, and then go ahead and lift up by knitting the ribs down. Don't just throw your head and your shoulders up. Inhale down. Let's do one more of those. Exhale, pull the belly in and knit it in and down. Knit your ribs in and down and lift up. Now stay there. If it's okay, let the head fall back into the hands. Not if it's okay, let the head fall back into the hands. Bring the other hand up if you want. Let the elbows stay wide. You can leave one on your belly if it makes more sense. Now, I want you to pretend that your feet are glued to the floor right now. And I want you to try to pick your right foot up, but you can't actually pick it up because it's glued to the floor. Yeah? So I'm not lifting the foot, but I'm doing the action of lifting it without actually bearing all of the weight. Bring that back down. And again, my left foot is glued to the floor. I can't lift it, but I'm going to really try to lift that foot up off. Or I don't, if that feels like more than I can do, or my low back changes, or my ribs change, and bring that back down. And again, exhale, right foot like you're going to lift it off, but it's glued to the floor. You can't actually lift the foot off the floor. And bring that back down. Do not hurt yourself for this. Bring that left foot like you could lift it, but it's glued to the floor, but you're trying to lift the foot off the floor. And bring that back down. Lower your upper body. Lower your head. Bring your arms by your side, palms up, feet wide, knees lean in, and pause. So now let's do a twist, and then we'll do a little bit of release for all of this work we've been doing. So now go ahead and walk your feet back into hip distance. You're going to bring your arms into cactus style arms. If that's too much for the shoulders, just TV arms out, right? But if you can, palms up, elbows down. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and find the transversus abdominus before you lift. So again, you can think of the push-pull action of the hands into the thighs to find that before you lift. And then lift your right leg up in a tabletop, and then lift your left leg. Again, knees could be closer to the chest if that feels too intense. Not a big deal. Go ahead and move your knees, hug them into each other. You could put a block between your knees if that helps you find a little bit more of the corset, the pelvic floor, etc. Right? Now you're going to look to your left and you're going to pin your left shoulder down. That's the most important piece to me today. Don't let your left shoulder lift off the floor. Squeeze the knees together and let the knees move to the right only as far as you can, keeping your left shoulder squeezed down to the floor. And inhale is going to bring you back up to center. I'm going to break the first one down real good. Go ahead and turn your head to the right. Squeeze your right shoulder to the earth. Do not let it lift. Squeeze your knees together as the knees go to the left. So it's not about making it to the floor at all, right? Go ahead and come back up. We're keeping our shoulders down today. Look to the left, pin your left shoulder down, squeeze the knees together as you're moving to the right. And now you know the pattern, so find your breath. But if you've already done like 3 of these, wow, your breathing is really shallow. Chances are really good you're turning on your stress response. And maybe that's what you're going for today. And if so, all the power to you. I personally have enough stress in my life in other realms. I don't like to add it in this realm. I like to move slow. I like to breathe slow and keep myself in my relaxation response and my nervous system, even though I'm working pretty strongly in the moment. When you finish your next left side, you're going to come back to center. If you have a block in there, remove the block. Separate our knees and our feet out to hip distance again, right? We're still in the same position we've been in. We've got one more piece, so whoo, here, are you ready? So now my angle of my ankle doesn't change, my angle of my knee doesn't change. All of this movement happens from the hip. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let my right foot move down towards the earth. If it makes it, I simply try to tap. I try not to put the weight in the floor, and then I bring that back up, and then I'm going to do the same with my left, right? So now go ahead and find your rhythm. Try to breathe slowly if you can and move slowly. By the way, you'll get more work if you move slower as well, right? The muscles have to work a lot harder when you're moving slower and controlling it. But that said, find your own pace, whatever that is, your own rhythm. And again, my heel is dropping quite a bit forward towards the front side of my mat when I'm keeping my knee and my ankle in the positions that they're in. And then when that left leg comes back the next time, bring the knees into the chest, hug the knees. I think after all of that deep abdominal work, this hopefully will feel mighty fine. You can rock a little bit from side to side, and I personally love to circle my knees so that I get that beautiful massage on my sacrum and my low back. Whew. Good morning. So you can tell kind of where I'm headed, right? Where we are headed. We're in the realm of the core, yes, but very specifically into the transversus abdominus. So now roll over to one side. Push yourself up. Come into hands and knees. This is where you might want that blanket to pad your knees. Optional. And, you know, if you have sensitive wrists, you could always bring those blocks in here. We're going to use them again in a little bit, but this is a place where you could come onto forearms if you've got sturdy enough blocks, or you could come onto forearms on the floor, right? If you can bear weight in your wrists, put more weight in your fingers, and then your poor little wrists don't do everything. You're going to curl your toes under for today. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into cat-cow. So I inhale my chest forward. I'm in an anterior tilt in my pelvis. And then I'm going to pull my belly up, and as I round, I move into a posterior tilt in my pelvis. So go ahead and move back and forth between those two pieces. Find your breath. We're doing it partly to stretch, but also hopefully knowing where an anterior pelvis is and a posterior pelvis. When you finish this next cat, come to a neutral pelvis. So I'm neither tucked nor tilted, yeah? My spine elongates out of there. I've got my natural curves, right? Make sure your head's not looking back at your thighs or somewhere back there, or that means your neck is not in line with the rest of the spine. Not wrong, just not neutral for what we're doing, right? And then from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to push down into those finger pads, maybe even pull the hands gently in towards each other. They're stuck on a sticky mat. They don't move. It's a traction action, right? And find a beautiful, strong upper back. And then move your thighs into an imaginary block between them. See if you can't find that corset again, that transversus abdominus. And then for some of us, this is plenty of work right here. We don't need any more. For some of us, we're going to lift our knees and hover them about not even an inch, like a piece of paper could get in there. You probably can't even see that I lifted my knees. That's how little I lifted them. But my knees are lifted. But I'm keeping my spine and my pelvis as neutral as I can. If I can't keep it neutral, I might not do this move. Go ahead and come on down. If you continue to move into things that are beyond your realm of work, and what I mean by that is every time you move in, you're pulling into a spine or you're dropping down into the low back, you know that can actually do more harm than good. So you might not lift the knees at all. So now find a rhythm with the breath, right? Before you go, push into the hands, the fingers particularly, pull the arms in, longest spine, find your transversus abdominus, and then with an inhale, you'll lift your knees just a smidge. And when you exhale, you'll tap them down. If you need to rest, rest, but otherwise try to just do a tap, and then you'll inhale, still bearing some of that weight without dropping the full weight into the knees. And exhale down. We got one more of those. Inhale, lift, and then exhale, come on down. Let your knees go wide, big toes touch. Walk your hands towards the front of your mat, and we're going to go to child's pose, but it's real slowly, right? So really lengthen your arms out, lengthen the spine, lengthen the spine. You don't have to drop the hips all the way down, and if you're feeling like, oh yeah, I've got a great stretch right there, you might not. If you want to come all the way down, the hands might drag back with you when you do, but it's an extended Utthita child's pose, Balasana today, right? So we're reaching the arms out nice and long, wherever the hips are. Soften the neck. And as I push gently down into my hands and my fingers, I'm going to leave my head up a little bit so my voice still comes through to you. But please have your forehead grounded if you're all the way in. And just lengthening through the sides of the body. Now come back up, hands and knees. Get everything hip and shoulder distance, right? The appropriate pieces, of course, limbs. And then push down. Come onto forearms if you need to. Pull the hands in. Find that neutral spine, find your corset, curl the toes under for today, and then you're going to simultaneously lift the right arm and the left leg. So on an inhale, right arm and left leg lift. If you're like, no, I'm not, I'm just going to lift my arm or my leg, you should do that. And then lengthen, right? Did your spine move? Did your hips move to the right? Did your shoulders move to the left? Could you keep yourself neutral? And then we're going to try to do taps, right? So exhale. Go ahead and bring the hand and the foot down and inhale. So they stay extended today. And exhale, tap. We're going to do 3 of these. Inhale is going to lift you. Don't lower that, don't let that low back fall down towards the ground, right? Don't go into an anterior tilt. This is where we can start to do some harm to the low back, is if we don't keep that corset really, not neutral. We tone the corset to keep the low back neutral, would be the best way, I think, to say that. And if you cannot do that, you don't have the strength for that yet, don't do the lift, don't do the dropping of the hands. Why hurt your low back when it's not strong enough to do that yet, right? Hands down, finger pads down, moving in, neutral, thighs in, curl the toes under, left arm and right leg. Maybe it's just one limb today, and that's where you stay nice and neutral, where the ribs don't flare, the low belly doesn't drop, right? And then we're going to do the taps. Exhale is going to bring you down, and you're just going to tap into the earth. Can you time it so that your hand and your toes, your fingers and your toes touch at the same time and end up at their topmost piece at the same time? And then when you've done your third, lengthen and then bring that down. This time your child's pose, you get to rest the arms. If you want to keep them extended, you can, but otherwise let the forearms come down. Take some weight out of the arms. You can lift keep the elbows down and lift the hands and rotate the wrists out if that feels good. I'm going to sway my hips a little side to side because that's what my body just asked for. So, if there's something your body's asking for, go ahead and do it. Okay, so now we're going to come back up, hands and knees. This time walk your hands a good distance in front of your shoulders. Oh, just a second. I think I just lost my mic pack. Sorry, guys. Oh, because it just broke. Okay. I'll deal with that later. Hopefully I'm not going to turn it off. Walk your hands a little in front of your shoulders. Right? You can curl your toes under or press the feet down. I'm going to press the feet down so that I get a little more toning through my abdomen, right? And then from there, move your thighs into that imaginary block, find the corset, find your neutral spine. And this might be plenty for you, but if you can, start to move the weight forward until your shoulders are over your wrists, right? And hopefully, maybe we have a line. I need to move my hands a little forward. From your knees to your hips to your shoulders, and the spine is in alignment. Right? Neutral alignment. There are all kinds of ways to align the spine. Sorry, into neutral alignment. Press the fingers down, pull them in. You could come onto forearms. Keep that low belly toned, that corset toned. And go ahead and move the hips back a little bit. So now watch me for just a second. You might add on coming forward, and you might just stay there and find that's your work. You might bend your elbows. You're not going to bend them lower than shoulders and elbows height, and then push back up. And then move back, yeah? So either you're just coming forward and holding it, or you're moving into a half, I guess I would call it, Chaturanga Dandasana, right? So inhale forward, keep the alignment. If you can't keep it, it's not worth it. Don't let those shoulders round forward. If you're bending those elbows, you can bend them an inch. You don't have to go all the way down as far as I am, right? Where is your work where you can keep your alignment? So I inhale forward. When I exhale, I may bend the elbows, I may not. I may just hold my forward position. I'll inhale to push up, and I'll exhale and move my hips back and give myself just a moment there without all of the weight. One more of those. Inhale forward, half plank. Maybe staying there, maybe half push-up or Chaturanga Dandasana staff. Inhale up and exhale back. And this time, move those hips back for just a moment. Keep those arms extended. Walk your hands to the right. Lengthen through that left side body. Walk over to the left. Lengthen through that right side body. And then go ahead and come back to neutral. We're going to move that blanket out of the way. And we got one more thing here, friends, and then we're going to take just a small, short little Shavasana. So this is where you're going to need those blocks. We're going to do bridge, but we're going to try and do it with the blocks. If you don't have it, you'll just do bridge. But if we have that little bit of extra height, it makes our legs work a little harder for us, which is always, not always, which can be a good thing and hopefully is today. You definitely want your heels on the blocks, yeah? That's the main part we're going to push down. Now you can leave the feet down if it's okay for you to flex your feet and get your heels down into the blocks. Everything is hip distance as we would with a regular bridge. My arms are going to be by my side, but I'm going to bend my elbows and have my fingertips point up. Often I hear this called robot arms. I am a robot. So from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to push into the heels. Now, instead of rounding up, often we round when we come up in bridge, you're going to lift the whole spine as one unit. Yeah? Now, I just want to point out a couple things, and then we'll move on the breath. If I push down into my heels, I'm really working my glutes and my hamstrings. If I pull my heels back, they're stuck, they're not moving, so they're glued where they are, but I'm going to gently pull my heels back towards the shoulder side of my mat, the head side of my mat. Oh, hi hamstrings. Now the hamstrings are really turning on, which really helps support the low back, yeah? Move those thighs into a block. The thighs do not go narrower than hip distance, nor wider. Most of us, they want to go wide here. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to tap down. If you need to rest, you can, of course. And then your inhale is going to lift you up into your bridge. And again, instead of rolling, you're kind of bringing the whole spine up as one unit, so to speak. I mean, I say the whole spine. In technicality, I'm only lifting up to about between my shoulder blades. So that much of the spine, you're lifting on an inhale instead of rolling. And you're exhaling, trying to tap instead of rest if you can. Keep pulling the heels back towards the shoulders every time you lift, right? Keep doing it as you come down, but they can have one moment of rest as well once those hippies tap the floor, if that makes sense. Let's try to do one more of these. Wherever you are in your cycle. Keep the neck soft, the shoulders soft, the jaw soft, and then go ahead and bring the hips down. Rest the feet on the blocks. Don't get rid of the blocks yet. We got one more thing here for them. We're going to take our left ankle to our right knee, flex the left foot, left thigh moves forward, and just stay here for a second. I'll give you the hug in a moment if you want it. Take your left hand on your left thigh, right? Make sure your hips stay neutral. I still have my lumbar curve. My ribs want to flare like crazy here, so I'm going to soften my low floating ribs down. But as you go to hug, here's the deal. Notice that if you choose to bring the legs in, you just rounded your low back into the floor and went into a posterior tilt. It is not wrong. It is not even necessarily bad. But I think you can get more in your hip if you try to find your natural lumbar curve again and your neutral pelvis. So if that makes sense, try that. By the way, you can do that with your foot on the block. You don't have to have your leg lifted. Hopefully we're saying, oh, thank you so much, glutes, for everything you did in class today, right? It wasn't a super glute heavy class, but we do ask them to turn on to support a lot of the stuff we did. And then go ahead and put the left foot on the block and bring the right ankle up to the left knee. Pause, make sure your pelvis is neutral, your ribs aren't flaring, your low back has this natural curve, that right thigh gently moves forward, right? You can stay here. Maybe bring those knees in. Now, I can't help it. My back rounds when I get into this position, but once I get the leg, then I can find that neutral alignment or work towards it anyway. If I had a teacher here, they'd probably be like, actually, you need to do this, this, and this. But, right, I do what I can with the body I have today and the knowledge that I have today, with the kindness and compassion I have for this beautiful body that has done so much in these almost 50 years. It has housed this spirit. And bring that left foot down, bring that right foot down. And you can go ahead and you can move those blocks off to the side and kind of kick them off and forward or wherever they're out of your way. And then let's go ahead and have the feet as wide as the mat. Let the legs move over to the right. So think windshield wiper. Pause and stay there. Now some of my friends can turn the head to the left if that feels all right. Some of my friends, if it feels like you're right now, we're probably a little more in the left hip, front of the thigh, front of the abdomen area. If you feel like it would be more beneficial to bring that left knee up and over to the right, and that brings you a little more into the back of the sacrum, low back, you can do that. I'm going back to windshield wiper. That's the area of my body that wants a little more attention today. Not always, just today. Knees up wherever you were. Start with a windshield wiper if you don't mind. Have the feet wide. Lean the knees over to the left. Once you get in, turn the head to the right and just pause there for a second. Just let that right hip, thigh, front of the hip area open. And then if it feels like, yeah, I'd also like to add in that other piece, the right knee moves up and maybe just kind of comes in over the left. And on this side, this one feels better. So I'm going to go with this one today. Oftentimes I'll do the same twist, but my tightness in my right hip is here. So, my whole point is make it your practice, individualize it for your body, right? And all your asymmetries. Bring those knees back up. You can either do constructive rest, where the feet are wide and the knees lean in, or you can extend the legs all the way out to straight. I'm going to take constructive rest because that's what I started in. And for me, that kind of gives me that blueprint of like, this is what my body felt at the beginning. This is what it feels like in the end. But that's not right or wrong. That's just what I like to do sometimes. We won't be here for too long, but take a few breaths and just notice what you notice, and then just have a few moments where you just get to be. Let the mind float. And my friends, you're at home doing this or wherever you are, but meaning not in person in the class. If you can, stay here for a few more minutes. Give your body that kind gift if you're on a time commitment. Any moves you need before you come on up through the fetal position, preferably, so you're not jamming the body into a bunch of muscular effort right away. Namaste, friends. And I didn't talk a lot about it during the class, but, working through this area, we're in the solar plexus. So hopefully maybe you walk around today, and with that supporting you, you feel a little more empowered as you move throughout your day.